We'll call this meeting the Ad Hoc Committee to review the management and operations of Tennessee State University to order. Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Senator Ackberry is present. Senator Crow is present. Senator Gardenhire is present. Senator Hale is present. Senator Hensley is present. Senator Powers is present. Senator Watson is present. Senator White is present. Chairman Lundberg.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have nine members present.
Thank you very much. And Senator Putty, we welcome you. You were not a member of the Education Committee when this ad hoc committee was formed, but we welcome you and here with us. On a moment of personal privilege, I would like to recognize former Senator Gilmore. It's nice to see you here. Those chairs may be more comfortable than these as well, so thank you. Any other personal orders to come before the committee? Seeing none, I see our Comptroller, Mr. Mumpower, is here. Comptroller, if you and your staff would like to come forward, or from the well, if you would, sir, you're welcome from the podium. This is the second meeting of this committee, and you have spent other time since then at our direction investigating further. So without objection, we will stand in recess to hear from the Comptroller. Mr. Comptroller, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and thank you to everyone here. We're glad to be back for this second meeting of this ad hoc committee to meet the charge that we were given to examine specifically the housing issue at Tennessee State University. And as you'll see from the presentation, we were able to examine that, which led to some other things. And Mr. Chairman, you said we had worked diligently. It's been at least a 4-month exercise that we have been involved in this project, and I would be remiss if, as I begin, I didn't take just a moment to recognize some people who have worked very diligently and very hard. At the table, you'll see Russell Moore. Russell's the director of the Comptroller's Office of Research and Education Accountability. You'll see Nicole Crittenden, and Donovan Patterson. Donovan and Nicole are both members of our state audit staff who have great experience in this arena, and you will hear more from them in just a minute. Now, Mr. Chairman, when our team, Donovan and Nicole, Russell, and others who have spent so much time at TSU and involved in these matters over the past few months, when they came back after we met late last year and shared the results of what they had found with me, I was surprised and to be honest, I was disheartened about what I read. When this review began, when we tried to step up and meet the charge you had given us, we began hoping to learn more about the sudden surge in enrollment at TSU and the subsequent request for emergency housing that came. And what we found, and I guess the disheartening part is that what we found is that what occurred is that TSU management in particular made a series of decisions that ultimately put themselves in this housing crisis, a crisis that was clear and they should have and could have seen coming. Now, our review that you'll hear about today explains that the university has experienced a housing shortage since at least 2017. Nevertheless, in the fall of 2021, TSU management decided to conduct an extensive recruiting campaign to bring in even more students, which by itself is certainly not a bad thing, but those students who were recruited were promised housing, and that was a promise that TSU knew it was not able to fill when they made that promise. The aggressive recruiting strategy involved a decision, an affirmative decision, to more than quadruple its scholarship budget from $5.2 million in 2021 to $28.3 million in 2022. And of that money, nearly 75% of the 1,722 scholarships awarded by TSU for the 2022-2023 school year were what we call full cost scholarships that guaranteed housing. Now, in just a minute, you will hear more about how the students who were recruited and received scholarships may actually not have qualified for these scholarships on the basis of their GPA requirements. They may indeed have been able to demonstrate a financial need, but we found no documentation to support the GPA requirements in the files we reviewed at TSU. Now, in the review today, you'll also hear about the fact that management did not present and receive final approval of the $28.3 million in scholarship from the TSU Board of Trustees until November of 22, which is well behind the time the fall semester actually began, and the money had already been awarded. They had not even presented this to the Board of Trustees. Now, we all know that Tennessee State University's mission is about transforming lives and promoting academic excellence. As I said in the previous hearing that we had here, everybody wants Tennessee State University to be successful, and we commend things like its Grammy-winning marching band, its athletic teams, and we want its academic programs to be strong as well. We also, very importantly, want students to have positive experiences. We don't want these students to have to wonder where they're going to live or live next semester. We don't want them to have to worry about when their scholarship award will come through. We want TSU to reflect strong financial practices. We want to see that reflected in their audits instead of years of repeated findings, which we have had over the past several years. Now, Tennessee State University clearly has had a goal to increase enrollment. But what you will see exhibited here and what we all inherently know is that they should only increase that enrollment if they can serve the students they're recruiting. And that is in all ways serve them. This review is broad. And we spent a lot of time focused on this housing issue, but you know, one thing we uncovered is not only was TSU not prepared to serve these students in terms of housing, they were not prepared to serve them in classroom instruction, in staffing, in food service, in security, in the many ways that students need to be served. I mean, particularly when you're recruiting, as we discussed in the meeting last fall, the number of first-generation college students who are being brought in. I mean, when you create an experience for them at first, that's really what makes or breaks the college experience. So I will come back to close out, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to turn things over to our team right now to better explain our conclusions, and I believe Nicole Crittenden is first up.
Nicole, you're recognized, and for each of you, before you begin, if you would, just for the record and for those who may be watching online, if you would introduce yourself and your title.
Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Nicole Crittenden, and I'm with the Comptroller's Office. I'm joined by my colleagues Donovan Patterson and Russell Moore, and we're here to present the key conclusions from the Comptroller's Special Report on TSU. Our first key conclusion is that TSU has repeatedly fallen short of sound fiscal practices, adequate documentation, and responsive communications to concerned parents and students. In the 2021 financial audit of TSU, our office noted uncorrected prior audit findings. These stemmed from TSU management's disregard of basic financial controls and fiscal management. Specifically, our financial auditors identified a lack of processes to record significant financial transactions, to perform routine bank reconciliations, and carry out other basic and fundamentally important financial practices. They also identified errors in financial reporting for 7 consecutive years. Regarding inadequate documentation, we noted that approximately 1/3 of all freshmen who received scholarships for the 22-23 academic year did not meet the scholarship's minimum GPA requirement. Now, these students might have qualified based on their financial need instead of the GPA, but the student files that we reviewed contain no documentation to that effect. Another example of some inadequate documentation involved the file review that we conducted as part of our research for this report. We found that 20 of the 59 student files that we reviewed, they either were missing the GPA on the scholarship listing provided by TSU, the transcript was missing from the student's file, or the GPA that was on the transcript was not comparable. For example, it might have had a 100-point based GPA as opposed to a 4.0 scale. And as most of you know, the Comptroller's office houses the HERO, or the Higher Education Resource Officer. The HERO is a resource for the questions and concerns of faculty, staff, employees, and students of higher education systems and institutions. Starting on August the 1st of 22, the HERO received concerns from multiple parents and students about unfulfilled scholarships, admissions, and housing-related issues at TSU. In some cases, TSU resolved these issues, but the numerous complaints filed with the HERO indicated a lack of responsiveness and communication on TSU's part. In late October of last year, TSU officials identified a need to improve their internal communications between their departments responsible for housing, enrollment, and scholarships. Then in November, TSU stated they planned to establish a customer relations and service unit to address student concerns and inquiries in an effective and timely manner. TSU has also implemented new enrollment management software. However, since our review work ended, the HERO has continued to receive complaints from TSU students regarding scholarships, account balances, and housing. From December the 1st through February the 3rd, 15 TSU students contacted the HERO asking for assistance. 14 of those students had concerns about their student account balances, and many of these concerns were time sensitive because the spring 23 semester was beginning and TSU was starting to purge student schedules due to outstanding account balances. Overall, timely and clear responses and communications to the parents and the students should be a part of the university's efforts moving forward. We also noted inconsistencies in TSU's testimony. For example, in 2021, TSU officials stated that the request to lease one hotel was a one-time request for one semester, but in July of 22, they requested to lease 11 more hotels. Another example is that TSU stated no freshmen would be housed in the hotels, but based on information provided by TSU, we determined that about 250 of the 881 students in hotels were actually freshmen. Now I'll turn it over to Donovan to present our second key conclusion.
Donovan Patterson, Comptroller's Office. Our second key conclusion is that TSU's lack of planning and management, especially regarding scholarship practices, exacerbated the university's existing housing problem. Several factors had a part in the record enrollment at TSU and the housing shortage. The TSU president has cited the national attention received by TSU, good publicity, and the development of strategic corporate partnerships. Another factor is what has been referred to as an HBCU renaissance, which refers to increased interest in and higher enrollment at HBCUs in recent years. High rental prices in the Nashville housing market have also played a role, and TSU administrators have cited the real estate market in Nashville as part of the reason for increasing numbers of TSU upperclassmen requesting on-campus housing. TSU officials have also cited the university's increased yield rate. Given these factors, careful planning and management of the drivers of increased enrollment under the university's control have grown increasingly important. But we found TSU's lack of planning and management, especially regarding scholarship practices, exacerbated the university's housing problem. When we look back at student demand for housing at TSU since 2017, we see that demand has exceeded supply almost every year over that period. When you compare the blue bars, which are TSU's housing capacity, to the red bars, which are the number of students TSU had to house each year, it's clear that they have consistently exceeded their housing capacity since 2017, especially in 2022. And at a time when record enrollment and student demand for housing had already created a housing shortage at the university, TSU management conducted an extensive recruiting campaign and more than quadrupled the scholarship budget, raising the total amount budgeted for scholarships from $5.2 million to $28.3 million for the 22-23 academic year. To put this in perspective, the amount budgeted for 22-23 is equivalent to the total amount budgeted for scholarships for the previous 4 years combined. TSU began making these scholarship offers in September 2021 at a time when the university was leasing one hotel and an apartment complex to cope with their existing housing shortage. And approximately 3/4 of these scholarships were full costs that guaranteed housing. In addition, TSU management did not inform the TSU board of the significant increase in the scholarship budget in a timely manner. The delay gave the board insufficient time to evaluate the effects of an increase of this magnitude on enrollment and the university's existing housing problem. TSU management did not present the significant increase in the university's scholarship budget to the TSU board until almost 1 year after the scholarships were offered to students. The figure for scholarships included in the 22-23 budget presented to the board in July of 2022 was $6.4 million. The $28.3 million budgeted for scholarships was not presented to the board until October, and the board did not approve it until November, 1 month before the completion of the fall 2022 semester. When TSU came before state officials in 2022 seeking to lease hotels, there were questions about the timeline of events. When, for example, did TSU realize enrollment levels were going to require multiple hotels? That's the question that we aim to answer with our review. In March of 2022, there were indicators of a significant increase in enrollment, such as the 130% increase in applications received and the 210% increase in net admitted students. And by the end of April, the number of housing applications had increased 217% over the prior year, signaling that housing demands would be at an unprecedented level. However, the search for overflow housing did not begin until the end of May, with the 11 hotel leases being presented to the TSSBA in late July. And now we will have Russell Moore present our third key conclusion.
Russell Moore from the Comptroller's office. Our third key conclusion is that the university's housing problem is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. As of October of last year, the university's on-campus housing capacity was 3,680 beds. This current housing capacity of 3,680 beds is below TSU's estimated need for this spring and also for the coming fall semester. For spring 2023, TSU estimated needing 4,360 beds. And for the fall, the estimate is 4,800 beds. TSU board members have stated that leasing hotels is not the ideal option, but they believe leasing will continue, at least through this coming fall semester. TSU officials plan to construct 2 new residence halls in the future. These 2 new halls will add 1,000 beds, raising the number of beds on campus to 4,680. However, TSU has identified 4 existing residence halls that may need to be demolished. These 4 halls have reached the end of their useful lives. The oldest one was built in 1951, and the remaining 3 in the 1960s. These 4 residence halls represent roughly 41% of TSU's current on-campus inventory of beds. Demolishing these 4 residence halls while building the 2 new residence halls yields a net reduction of approximately 500 beds. Assuming student demand for on-campus housing at least holds steady, TSU will likely require off-campus leases for the foreseeable future. TSU's current housing problem leaves the university with limited ability to adequately respond to unforeseen events. Think about a fire at a residence hall or mold discovered at a residence hall. Also, if a higher number of students than anticipated remain enrolled at the university, demand for student housing could be higher than expected, and TSU's housing problem could worsen. TSU is taking some steps to respond to the current housing problem. The university has indicated it plans to limit the number of new students this coming fall semester to 2,600. The university plans to provide housing for 1,600 of those 2,600 new students. TSU's assumption is the other 1,000 new students will not need university-provided housing. TSU also plans to award fewer full-cost scholarships, which include guaranteed housing in the future, among other changes. Additionally, the TSU Board of Trustees has established a housing committee to focus on easing the university's housing pressures. So to recap our three key conclusions. Number one, TSU has repeatedly fallen short of sound fiscal practices, adequate documentation, and responsive communications to concerned parents and students. And there have been repeated inconsistencies between testimony given by TSU officials and actions later carried out. Number two, TSU's lack of planning and management, especially regarding scholarship practices, exacerbated the university's existing housing problem. And number three, the university's housing problem is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. We will now present our policy considerations, which range from changes to TSU's Board of Trustees to enhanced reporting from TSU. One option for the General Assembly is to place TSU under the authority of the Tennessee Board of Regents, rescinding TSU's status as a locally governed institution for a period of time. This could be done in at least two ways. One, by vacating the current TSU Board of Trustees and placing all operations under the authority of TBR, or assigning authority over TSU operations to TBR while retaining the TSU Board of Trustees, but in an advisory capacity. This could be the current board or a new board. At some point, the General Assembly could consider returning authority back to the TSU Board of Trustees once certain conditions are met. Another option is for the General Assembly to vacate and restructure the TSU Board of Trustees, but not place authority over TSU operations under TBR. Or the General Assembly could leave the current board and TSU management in place, but mandate that TSU submit an annual scholarship plan and monthly scholarship reports, housing application data and enrollment application data on a monthly basis, and projected enrollment classification data for the coming fall semester on November 1st of each year. Enrollment classification data, that would include things like the number of out-of-state students, the number of students living on campus, the number of students living off campus in TSU-provided housing, the number of online-only students, and other related information. This data could be submitted to various parties, including state legislators, the Tennessee State School Bond Authority, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, Tennessee Board of Regents, and others. We list possible recipients in the full report. The basic idea here is that regular reporting by TSU will keep state officials and others apprised of scholarship, housing, and enrollment trends at the university. Some of our policy considerations are directed to the TSU Board of Trustees. The TSU Board of Trustees could replace current TSU management. The TSU Board of Trustees should consider implementing a policy requiring the board's approval of significant financial and budget changes, especially concerning scholarships. Other policy considerations are directed to TSU management, whether the current management or a new management team. TSU management should consider the recruitment and retention of the capital projects manager position to be a top priority, and this hire should be confirmed by the TSU Board of Trustees. As of January 31st of this year, our understanding is that this position was vacant. TSU management should consider adding an additional new residence hall to eliminate the expected on-campus bed deficit, especially considering there are 4 residence halls identified for demolition in the future. TSU management should also consider improving its responsiveness to communications received from parents and students, revising what approvals are needed for fund transfers to the university plant fund accounts, and ensuring there is proper documentation attached to any accounting entries, and properly documenting scholarship award decisions through a multiple-step approval process. Mr. Chairman and members, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I will now turn things back over to Comptroller Mumpower for some closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman and members, I want to take a moment and publicly thank my team here today and the team members who are not here today that worked on this project for their work. I hope we have risen to meet your charge. I know that this project has taken several months. For us, it has sometimes been frustrating, in part because TSU management provided such inconsistent information regarding some key actions and decisions, but I hope you will thank them today as well. Now, in what's been outlined, we provided the General Assembly with 12 policy considerations that run the gambit. Some of them are as serious as vacating TSU's Board of Trustees and TSU's management, while others call for new policies and call for measures that would provide more accountability. Now, while we have offered these to you as considerations, in my opinion, some of them are very common sense measures and actions that must be taken. As you can see from the presentation, and I think as today members of the Senate who are here, what I can tell you for certain is that the issues and the problems at TSU will not be solved overnight. As you heard illustrated, the housing problem is going to continue to exist for quite some time, and the state will be responsible for making sure that the campus has adequate facilities. What I can say as well is that TSU is a wonderful place. It is full of wonderful people and wonderful students. It has amazing alumni, but right now TSU is not a well-run organization. And that the housing issue that has been illustrated, the housing issue that we've illustrated today, is only a symptom of a much larger management problem. Now, Mr. Chairman and members, as we talk about that, it is important to remember the structure that TSU is governed under. You know, you've heard TSU described today as an LGI, a locally governed institution. And the way that works, just to make sure that you know or anybody listening knows, is that the way it works is that the governor nominates members to serve on a board of trustees. You, as a General Assembly, interview and then confirm them. So what I am saying is, and what I think you probably know is, the trustees represent you. And clearly, as we have exhibited today, looking back at some of the actions taken, you know, some of them, again, I told you, the management didn't even tell the trustees about for some amount of time. But looking back at the decisions that have been made over a period of months and years, it is easy to see that some number of the Board of Trustees have not been living up to their full fiduciary responsibility that they were charged with when you confirmed them to serve on this board. Or if maybe they just haven't been paying attention. But maybe worse, if they have been paying attention, they've been fully engaged in some of the poor management decisions that have been made. And I think that is a question that you need to ask these trustees, because they are appointed by you, they are accountable to you. I'm sure some number of them are here today. Now, I can tell you anecdotally, personally, that just last week, and Comptroller Emeritus Wilson was with me when this happened, we had a member of the Board of Trustees call us, and in a long-ranging conversation with that trustee told us, we don't think there need to be any changes in the Board of Trustees, and we don't think there need to be any changes in management, but trust us, everything else is going to change. And it's just hard from a common sense perspective to see how that can happen. There is no doubt that the primary reason Tennessee State University exists is for the welfare of its students. and we have talked to a lot of people about this report. And one other thought I want to leave you with, and this thought can be echoed by anybody sitting at the table in front of me who have been on the campus, been on the ground. As we have talked to many, many, many different people about this report, we have heard requests to be sure and preserve Tennessee State University's standing in the nation. Be sure to preserve the management. But very seldom have we heard any concern expressed for the students. It has more been about preserving the management and preserving some standing in an academic community that exists in the nation. Tennessee State University first needs to be about properly managing, properly operating a university locally, making sure that they're able to educate students that come, making sure that they can increase a graduation rate that has been hovering around 40%. Tennessee State University can and must be successful in every respect. That's what I want. I know that's what you want. I'm sure that's what everybody here wants. I know that we share that vision. We are glad to have been charged and been able to present this report to you about this specific issue, again, that does represent a symptom of a larger issue. I thank you. We're happy to answer any questions.
Comptroller, I thank you, and also, and I will tell you that you did measure up and deliver the expectations, and to Nicole and Donovan and Russell, and frankly, others who are behind you and who have worked on this. I thank you for your work. Let me open it up to the committee to see if there are any questions. Senator Crow, Chairman Crow.
I don't have a question, but I would like to just note that we thank our Comptroller Emeritus for always being involved in these sorts of things. His background, experience, and knowledge is very fruitful for these things. So thank you, Justin, for helping with this.
Thank you, Chairman Crow. Other questions? Comptroller, appreciate your time. So thank you all. So President Glover, if you would, as they vacate, if you would like to come and bring whomever you would like. President Glover, welcome. So as those who were before you, I ask if you would, before you speak and begin, if you would introduce yourself for the record and for those who may be watching at home. Otherwise, you are recognized, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. May I ask a personal, therefore a personal privilege to speak at the podium? It's really a health concern this morning.
You are welcome to. So
Thank you.
Indeed. President Glover, there's a little light there. If you would check to see that it's on for the microphone.
Thank you, Chairman Lundberg, members of the committee, for allowing me, the Board of Trustees, and members of the TSU administration the opportunity to appear before you today. The following individuals are with me today. Dr. Deborah Cole, would you raise your hand as I call your name? Dr. Deborah Cole, who is Chairman of TSU Board of Trustees. Dr. Owen McKenzie, member of the Board Special Committee on Housing and member of the Audit Committee. Mr. Douglas Allen, Vice President for Business and Finance. Mr. Sean Wimberly, our student trustee. Also present, our other trustees. Trustee Andre Johnson, Trustee Pamela Martin, Trustee Richard Lewis, Trustee Bill Johnson, Trustee Van Pinnock. Thank you. And I acknowledge the members, the many members of the TSU family who are here today. As we respond to the Comptroller's report, I am elated to share that TSU is in a better position now than we've ever been in our 111-year history, including the 10 years where I served as president. Better financial position, better academic position. And we express our willingness to work with the board on complying with the reasonable policy recommendations that have just been presented by the Comptroller. But I tell you, to remove or dismantle TSU's leadership at this point in time will not only hurt or even destroy the legacy of TSU, but it will cause irreparable harm to our students and their families. And now a word about the background of this review. I received a letter from the Comptroller notifying TSU about the Comptroller's office review, conveying a positive and supportive tone and intention. The letter indicated that the Comptroller was excited, have it right here, was excited to learn about university success and increased student interest in attending TSU. The Comptroller also indicated that he would be conducting a review, not an audit, to support TSU and the legislature in identifying and addressing future needs, noting that TSU will require external funding, which may include legislative appropriations in future years. So they came to us as if they were trying to help, not destroy. The letter notifying TSU of the review also stated that the goal of this review is to support TSU and the legislature in identifying and addressing future needs. Now, the letter versus the report. While we appreciate the Comptroller's efforts, we are profoundly disappointed in its tone and its contents, and a report that does not comport with the stated purpose of the review. It is not aligned with what he said it was for. The whole purpose of the report was deceptive from the beginning. If we look at the report's alignment with the conclusions, we can see the report's conclusions and the policy consideration do not align with the information that was developed in the report. And there is a lack of proportionality. In other words, the proposed penalties, policy considerations, penalties do not fit the infractions or the alleged infractions. But two statements are missing from the report. Number one, that there is no money missing or misappropriated and no fraud, as confirmed by the state auditors in the Comptroller's office. Let me say that once more and slowly. There is no money missing or misappropriated. No money missing or misappropriated.
Members,
The second-
this is, pardon me, President Glover, this is an exchange of information. This is not a sporting event. If you have comments you'd like to make, I would ask you to respect the body here and do that afterwards. My apologies for the interruption.
The second missing statement from the report makes no reference to the Land Grant Study Committee's revelation that TSU is owed approximately $544 million, and how the historical deficiency in funding for TSU has impacted its facilities and lack of facilities, including the residential facilities, its reserves, and financial aid to students. I say that once more and slower. TSU is owed approximately $544 million from the state of Tennessee, as determined by the state analysts. That's not reported in this report, and that cannot be ignored. Many students who come to TSU are not just coming to college, but are escaping poverty and an environment of low expectations. I know because I was one of those students in South Memphis, low income, grew up in a depressed neighborhood. College was my way out. So when I became president of TSU, I took these challenges personally. I take student success personally because Tennessee State University is home for me. Everything I am, I owe to TSU. In spite of the housing crisis that was discussed, not one student who paid a room deposit was forced to return home. We know that if a student returns home, the literature shows that that student is very likely not to return to college, and they probably will never pursue higher education again. That's the population we serve at TSU. We're not perfect beings, and we're not proud of some of the challenges or the mistakes that have been identified. We must own that, and we do. But I am proud of how quickly we addressed any issue and the substantial progress that we have made. The housing challenge was probably one of the biggest challenges we have faced, but we're resilient. We regrouped and we solved the problem. We solved it for the spring semester, and we're working to ensure housing is addressed for fall 2023 and long term. We put in place long-term solutions. Some were difficult, very difficult, and bold, but they had to be made for the betterment and future of TSU. Yes, we have faced some challenges. I understand that. I also understand that we have met them head on. As a result, TSU has been made better because of this. To put this in proper perspective, I'd be remiss if I did not point out historically all TSU presidents have been challenged with a deficiency in funding over the years, and I'm no different, including missing land grant funding, reviewed by the General Assembly's Joint Committee on Land Grant Institutions I just mentioned. This has contributed to the state of our facilities and the lack of facilities. But we've overcome decades of underfunding to achieve the record enrollment, and then now to be met with skepticism and have been minimized, and no recommendation for supportive resources. We don't mind the scrutiny, not at all, but we do mind the damage to the reputation and for the prospects for our students. Think about it, committee members. Had we received the funding that TSU was owed? Honestly, do you think we'd be sitting here having this conversation today? There'd be no housing crisis. There'd be no accusations of over-recruitment. There'd be no scholarship conversation. Let's imagine what TSU could have become if we had only had a fraction of the funding owed to us. We could possibly purchase property near the university years ago for use for student housing before prices became sky high or gentrification set in. And we could have had the growth experienced by other institutions in our state. It's time to support TSU, not destroy TSU. Not have a misleading report that is not based on facts. Yet we hear the words, we want what's best for TSU. Let's make that statement a reality. The first policy consideration in the Comptroller's report was Tennessee State University becoming a part of the Tennessee Board of Regents again. TBR is an outstanding organization, but not for governing TSU. Why? Because it has become a community college system now after the implementation of the Focus Act. They'd rather consider a single four-year university in a governing system of community colleges, a system that has no structure whatsoever to support a four-year institution. That is discrimination. We've had the Geyer lawsuit that addressed the same action of dual higher education systems in this state. We can't go back to the CBR system. And let's talk about scholarships. Scholarships have become the primary consideration of this review. Not money, not mismanagement, not missing money, not misappropriation of money. Scholarships that we paid for from our own funds. We never came back to you and asked for one dime for scholarships. And then what is more concerning is the Comptroller tried to discredit our legitimate marketing and recruitment efforts to increase enrollment, as you earlier had criticized us for not increasing enrollment. The report tried to portray that we had unqualified students receiving scholarships, and that some students didn't receive their funding at all. No student received a scholarship who did not meet the scholarship requirements, the scholarship criteria, from a GPA standpoint or from a need-based standpoint. So that part of the report is absolutely unequivocally untrue. We had the best and brightest students who chose TSU. We had so many that, yes, We increased our scholarship budget to support the students coming to TSU. We want our black kids in school at TSU. So we used the money in the scholarship budget, and then we used money we generated from fees. Again, no request from the state. There's nothing illegal or underhanded or misguided about us transferring money that we generated from tuition and fees, transfer from a savings account to another operating account, as we sometimes do in our personal lives. Again, no request from the state. We want to get help. We want to help to get more of our black kids in school, first generation students, enrolled in college, and get them across that finish line. That's our job as administrators. That's what we do at TSU. We did all of this despite not getting the funding, the millions of dollars that are owed to TSU. I offer this lack of funding not as an excuse, but as an opportunity for you to see how we had to do so little and we had so little and produced so much. Some of the greatest professionals in this world that they've ever known have started right here at Tennessee State University. With that, I have just a few charts. We have made several organizational changes to TSU's operational needs, including reassigning personnel with their better aligned skills, organization changes in the department, in the college, in the schools, the divisions of enrollment management and student affairs. Next. We've had changes to establish Office of Customer Service, to streamline operations, to be there for the students. In the process of hiring an assistant vice president for customer relations, we retained a public relations firm to work with us. We've tried to increase our working relationship with Hero by demonstrating with them new products that we have. We've made some game-changing investments in software where we can track each time the TSU enrollment management staff communicates with students. This is game-changing for us because we can just push a button and it will tell us every time we've had a contact with a student, whether they contacted us or we contacted them. So we can eliminate all the questions they've had about not being responsive by TSU. Next. We've increased accountability. They have increased accountability to the governing board. They've significantly beefed up their efforts to hold the management, administration, and administrator accountable for the many aspects of our operations. And we are happy that the board is exercising, they've always exercised the proper governance, but they've stepped it up even more. And when the board was called into question, our board chair wanted to make sure that they were operating effectively as a board. So they retained the top premier board consultant in the country, the Association of Government Boards, the same one that THAC retained when we established, when Governor Haslam established the 6 LGIs. Ms. Carol Cartwright was the person who did it then, and she was available now. Go to the next one. Her conclusion, back up. Her conclusion is, based on information gathered during the review, the board is operating effectively and in alignment with good governance practices. That's what came from the leading board consultant in the country for higher education. Go to the next one. We've said enough about housing, but I would just say about housing, I'm happy to report there is no housing crisis this spring semester. We fixed it. We fixed housing. We fixed it, and we put in long-term recommendations, long-term solutions for our housing. So our enrollment trends reflect that we could possibly have as many as 10,000 students. I want you to know we've heard you. We heard you. We're going to manage our enrollments to align with our housing capacity. That's a decision made by the board and the management. We know that our alignment is close to probably we could get 9,000 like we have, but we're going to look more at 8,500 where we probably can match them better with our students. Let's go to the finance statement audit that you heard much about. First of all, not one audit procedure was performed for this report. It was cut and paste from the last audit. From the last audit. No one looked at anything on this audit, but yet a conclusion is reached. For this body, that there are some audit issues they didn't even look at. No one looked to see if we had reconciled bank statements that was issued. Nobody asked about that at all. One question was asked about the plant fund. So we received unmodified or clean opinion for the year. Clean audit opinions in each of the prior years. So, but our goal is no audit findings. So they relate primarily to the bank reconciliation that have been done. The findings are now corrected. No money was misappropriated, no fraud. They confirmed that. Next. So, because of the timing of the audit, we won't be able to look at, the auditors will not be able to look at those 3 findings because they won't get to it till much later. And we probably won't get to report till after this June 30, 2023 audit period would have ended. So, the firm of Ragland and Associates, the CPA firm, was retained because we wanted to get something to our accrediting body. Not necessarily because we disagreed with what the auditors had, but because we had to get something to our accrediting body. The Ragland CPA firm concluded that the corrective actions, best practices incorporated, policies and procedures developed, all being of additional and new competent, the hiring of additional new and competent personnel properly address and mitigates the deficiencies. And the next one goes to the 3 findings. First findings, procedures for preparing and receiving the university's financial statements. CPA firm concluded, in compliance, deficiency corrected. The second one, second finding, university bank reconciliations. CPA firm concluded, in compliance, deficiency corrected. Third finding, policies and procedures for the collection of accounts receivable. The CPA firm concluded, in compliance, deficiency corrected. So, we can skip the next one in the essence of time. Go to the next one. So our financial position is strong. I know, because I'm a CPA myself. With our CFI index, the composite financial index, is 3.4. The average, the standard for public higher education is 3.0. We exceed the standard. But the next chart will tell you, we remain strong with a healthy balance sheet. We have never defaulted on any of our debt obligations. We've never been late on a debt payment. We've never had to have our state appropriations intercepted to pay for debt. We have increased our endowment from 42 million to almost 100 million, over 125% increase in our endowment, and our reserve position remains strong. Next. So the repeat audit findings, I told you about that before, because the first employee went to TBR, who did the bank reconciliations. TBR recruited that person away for more money. Then we got another person in. That person was recruited to TBR by the prior person. Then the third person came in to work on it. That person was recruited by TBR. So each time we had a person to come in, they were recruited by TBR. We finally got a CFO in, and that person has retired and is no longer with us. Now, current financial leadership, we have 5 CPAs. The 5th one will start March 1st. Next. We're worried about the endowment. I mentioned our endowment growth. Next. Plant funds. Plant funds at 52.7 million. Someone said we're likely to run out of cash. We're likely to run out. That's the conclusions to this body. We're likely to run out. If I have a flat on a highway on one tire, and I think they were bought at the same time, I'm likely to have 2 flats. But I wouldn't put that in a report to this body that you've hired them to do, to look at TSU. You're going to say what might happen? We might run out of money. And we might not, because we have good, sound fiscal policies to keep us from running out of money. So I won't do the rest of it because there's just so much. But I want to just say that the demand for campus housing has exceeded supply. And so we've gone through all that. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. Next one. And the next one. The scholarships. I mentioned scholarships. We provided scholarships to students in alignment with the scholarship criteria. We didn't give anybody any scholarship who didn't meet the criteria. I heard them say that X number of students didn't meet the criteria. That's just not true. It's just simply not true. I'm not sure what was reviewed, but that's just simply not true. We have some students who, when they got when they gave us their transcript earlier, and as we made the offer to them, had 1 GPA on there. But by the time they finished school and got their final transcript, sometimes it's different. And if that's the case, rather than sending them back home, we had transferred money from funds that we had and put them in the scholarship fund and gave them a student SAG, a student assistance grant, which was capped into our scholarship budget. So there was just no need to make a statement, an irresponsible statement like that. I think that's it. Next one. So the enrollment data, we went over that, the enrollment of first-year students. I do want to show how it next one, how it compares with our peer HBCU institutions. We talked about the HBCU Renaissance. FAMU, Jackson State, North Carolina Central, Texas Southern, Tennessee State, all had, those just 5 we talked to. We got the numbers from them, but there are others who call me because I'm the head of the group, so I know the information they have been reported. I can share it with you. Not only that, there are some in our own state. The next one shows the first-year class in Tennessee. MTSU and AP and Austin Peay stayed about the same. If you look at East Tennessee State, they were up in that first-year class. They were up 11%. Tech was up. The only one that had a slight decline was Memphis. And then TSU had 117%. So there's just a surge in first-year students. We're coming off COVID, coming back to college. So in the next year, we plan to limit our first-year enrollment to manage in concert with our housing. We think we'll have beds that's going to require for 1,600. And we got some other indications that about 1,000 would be students that won't require beds. We are giving priority to the in-state students. Next. I think that's it next. We've already gone over. With grants, as we try to move from R2 to R1, which may be threatened if we go to the community college system. We're one of the leading institutions in federal grants. In fact, we're the highest from agriculture through NIFA. So last year, it was $67 million. This year, we've already met that, exceeded that goal. So we're doing our job when it comes to getting grants and research and outside funding from our corporations. In fact, we have so many companies that gave TSU $1 million that we started $1 million club for folk who are interested in supporting TSU. We had a question about scholarships. We've already gone over scholarships. Go to the next one. Customer service, I mentioned that to you. Next one. The infrastructure. All I say about infrastructure is that we appreciate the appropriation that the Disassembly, $250 million for infrastructure to approve for improvements at TSU. And we've signed an agreement with the outside consultant, JLL, to assist us in managing this and maintaining TSU facilities. And so, next. So, that completes the slide presentation. And I was telling you, I mentioned a lot about lack of funding. And again, and I want that to be considered by this body. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee for this opportunity to discuss TSU. Now our board chair, Dr. Deborah Cole, will make some brief comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I've served as chair of the Board of Trustees for the last 2 years. Let me comply with your request that I identify myself. I'm Dr. Deborah Cole, Chair of the Board of Trustees of Tennessee State University. I am also a 2-time graduate of Tennessee State University. Just to give some general information, my prior financial services experience, I served as president of a local bank for over 25 years, and also I was on the audit and tax staff for a national CPA firm. I've also served on many boards. I served on the board of Citizens Bank. I was also on the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's advisory board, various national nonprofit boards, and also served on the TSAC audit committee and was invited to serve when the new committee was formed, but could not do it at that particular time. So I do have overall governance experience. The TSU board appointment and the reappointment to TSU, I sincerely appreciate, and I appreciate you also for approving those recommendations from the governor. As I have been on the board of Tennessee State University Board of Trustees, I have served as chair of the audit committee. I've served as the vice chair of the board, and for the last 2 years, I am the current board chair. As a board member, my close engagement on several issues confronting the institution included prior audit report findings. The institution has reduced those from 7 findings to 3, taken action to correct the remaining deficiencies, also established a housing advisory committee to address issues that you all brought forth, enrollment and scholarship. Having had prior audit experience, I do understand how audit reports are put together, and I appreciate the work that you all have done in putting together your report. At the same time, I also recognize that at various times there is a difference in opinion as to the content of the report for various reasons. So, but in your report, we in no way take it as disagreeing with everything that was in there. As in our response, you will see there are things that we feel that we do need to do. I also led the board audit committee in discussions regarding prior audit findings and the audit actions that TSU administration had to take to get those corrected. If you just look at the board meeting that is streamed, you not see the work of the TSU Board of Trustees. The work of TSU Board of Trustees is shown in the audit committee meetings, and you will see that the audit committee and all committee meetings will show the engagement of the Board of Trustees. I am in constant communication with President Glover on a weekly basis, sometime more than weekly, to discuss various operational issues. At the same time, I understand that as a chair of the Board of Trustees, and as the Board of Trustees, we cannot operate the institution. We do are charged with setting policies. These discussions that we have with I have with President Glover and other board members with President Glover have led to reorganizations at the board's direction involving units within the university. We've included termination of employment in several units, and especially in the business and finance division, and also in enrollment management division. I am proud of TSU's enrollment growth after declining or stagnant enrollment for several years. I am a first-generation student at TSU. I was a first-generation student at TSU. Your recognition of the unprecedented historical enrollment growth that we had at TSU for the fall of 22, we sincerely appreciate that recognition. TSU emerged from COVID with a certain degree of uncertainty, and we managed COVID in an unprecedented manner. The board could not quantify the effect of the HBCU renaissance associated with the TSU programs, and the outstanding recruitment would have created the record enrollment that we had. Your position on sending students, including first-generation students, home, otherwise leaving them to their own device rather than finding the short-term housing to them, just was not something that we could support. Now, we do recognize, and that's why we've made the adjustments that we've made in housing for this very coming over, but we did not feel we could send those students home. That is dear to me, as I mentioned before, because I am a first-generation student that attended Tennessee State University. You recognize there are many differences of opinion as to how to handle a particular situation, and we recognize your opinion in terms of housing matters. We take your comments very seriously. As I expressed in a conversation with Comptroller Mumpower, I take my job seriously. The Board of Trustees take their job seriously. Not saying that we do everything perfect, but saying that we strive to make Tennessee State University the very best university that it can be. The conclusions reflected in the Comptroller's report, even if we consider them as all being accurate, which the institution disputes some of them, but at the same time we agree to making certain changes that need to be made. But we do not, and I cannot support the drastic and unprecedented structural changes proposed for consideration by the Comptroller. The outside financial statement issues, as the president mentioned, we hired a firm to look at that. I took that very seriously. I sent a letter to the Comptroller saying we would retain the services of a firm to look at that. We did. I believe that report I know that report has been submitted to you. We're not talking about a 3 to 5 year pattern on all the issues that we have. All those issues have not existed for the entire time of this board. The information that is presented was based on the 6/30/21 audit report. We've not had the ability, or you've not had the chance to look at the 6/30/22 audit findings because that report is not finished. But when it is finished, I am confident that you will see that most of the items have been corrected. Other than the financial statement matches, these issues did not exist when the TSU Board of Trustees was renewed in 2021. And again, I appreciate your renewal for the board. Any governance structural changes, including placing TSU under TSU Board of Regents or any other governing structure, would not be beneficial to TSU and to the students. And I heard someone mention that we were not considered the students. The students, without the students, we don't have a university. So yes, we consider the welfare of the students, and we want the best for those students. Such changes that are being presented would possibly affect TSU's accreditation, grants, research, and the president mentioned where we stand with research. I appreciate the recent communication that I received from the consultant, Ms. Carol Cartwright. And as the president said, THEC hired this same organization. And she worked with the board recently on the governance matters that we'll be working with the board as part of our self-assessment. As in the conclusion that the president presented, she said that the board is working effectively. I recognize there's always an opportunity for growth, and in no way do I deny that the growth is needed. But at the same time, we're saying that we are willing to take the wealth experience that we have on the board, take the recommendations or any recommendations for improvement from our consultant and work with that. The board continues to work closely with President Glover under her leadership, and we are also working with her. I talked with her about reestablishing a chief operating officer position to help with managing some of these issues. The board will continue to hold President Glover and the other members of management responsible and accountable for enhancing practices, policies, and documentation. I request and I hope that the state will support TSU's growth in the same manner it supports other institutions. The governance changes will create two governance systems for the university students in Tennessee. One for UT, then we have LGIs, and then you want to put TSU, or recommendation to put TSU under the Board of Regents. This cannot be a picture or reality that we want to convey to TSU students, as well as to the citizens of the state and of the nation. TSU students are a proud group of individuals, many of whom have overcome enormous obstacles to be able to make it to TSU. We have a proud group of alumni members that are here with us today. The reestablishment of the board would also cause major disruption to the TSU students. And again, I stress TSU students of utmost importance to us, because without students, there is no TSU. And once again, TSU students would be felt like they have been treated differently, and we don't want them to feel that way. The board has been in place for nearly 6 years, and bringing in a new board without the institutional knowledge and the understanding of the issues concerning TSU and TSU students would be harmful to TSU students. We had a growing process when we first became a board, and we appreciated the assistance that was provided to us by consultants in being able to become a more effective board. I thank you for allowing me to make these comments, and now I want to pass it over to Dr. McKenzie, who is a TSU graduate, a member of the Board of Trustees, and a Wall Streeter. Dr. McKenzie.
Thank you. Good morning. Dr. McKenzie, would you check your microphone, sir?
Now.
There we go.
All right.
Thank you.
First, I'd just like to thank you for the privilege of speaking with you this morning. I am a Tennessee State graduate, but even before that, I'm a proud Tennessean. Over 78 years ago, I was born in a small town, McKenzie, Tennessee, about 120 miles from here. I come from a long line of McKenzie for Tennessee citizens. I'm a Tennessee boy, as they say, where I come from. My first bed when I joined Tennessee State as a member of the family was in a bunk bed in the house of a kind lady on Jefferson Street. And I walked to Tennessee State to begin my career in 1967. I graduated. I am here because to protect the legacy of our students and our families, and I wanted to speak to you personally because I'm a product of Tennessee State University, our educational system, what we learned in terms of ethics, academics, how to run our lives, etc. I graduated from Harvard Business School in 1972. I have an honorary doctorate in commercial finance from the University of Hartford. And for those who care, I stay prayed up, I have a Holy Ghost degree as well. I've walked this far, I've come this far by faith, and I'm here this morning by faith. And when I got up this morning, I prayed that God would give me the words to say to you that did not just resonate with your head, but resonated with your heart. I grew up under Jim Crow. I didn't like Jim Crow then, and I don't like Jim Crow now. We do not need any more governance. When the Honorable Bill Haslam flew to New York to recruit me to be a member of this board, he called me in because he knew that I had the experience to contribute to proper governance of our august institution. I was at that time a managing director of the largest institutional asset management firm in the world, that being BlackRock, with over $10 trillion under management, where I left 4 years ago before I set up my own financial advisory practice. I'm a member of several boards, both public boards and private boards, and I'm very proud to say that after a review by a prominent consulting organization, that we came away with very high scores with the way this board is run. I am currently licensed by the National Association of Securities Professionals, by the SEC. I'm governed for financial ethics, and I sit on the audit committee of our board, and very, very sensitive to the numbers, to how things are run, to how run a business. I sit on now 6 or 7 different boards, one of which is a public board reporting to the Securities and Exchange Commission. And so I say all that not to blow smoke at myself, but to let you know that I'm one of a very experienced group of professionals that sit on this board. But more importantly, I want you to know that I'm here to protect and to help protect the legacy of Tennessee State University. I am a product of Tennessee State University. I made my bones right at Tennessee State University. I took those bones to Harvard Business School, and I graduated at a very, very respectful position in my class. I received on an honorary doctorate from the University of Hartford from those bones at Tennessee State University. My sleeping in a bunk bed the first year that I walked Jefferson Street on my way to Tennessee State did not keep me from having a 3-point+ average at Tennessee State University to qualify me to be accepted to any university in the country. I take our responsibility to build productive citizens who go into the United States, to the world, to be productive citizens very seriously, and we are very, very capable of doing that. We can manage our own affairs. We respect the criticisms, the comments, the analysis that has been given here by the Comptroller's office. However, I find some of the recommendations frankly egregious. When Governor Haslip asked me to come here, he asked me to come here to help build a self-governing body. And that is what I have done for over 6 years as a contribution to this institution, which I love, and for the students that I understand and their families that I understand. When I came here, my father was a janitor. My mother worked on a telephone line, putting telephones together. And I walked to school with a pair of blue jeans and a white T-shirt, but they were clean and they were well pressed. And so I also picked lima beans behind my grandmother in the heat of the Tennessee sun. So I know from whence these families come when they come to Tennessee State. And you have to understand these families, these children, and our legacy to understand what it would mean as a step back to Jim Crow, to put us underneath a community college system is a step back. So I flew here from New York to make sure that I was here to appeal to you that in a respectful way, I respect what the controller thinks he found. I respect what the controller thinks he knows about, but I would encourage you to come and visit our institution, to sit in on some of our board meetings, to listen to some of the detailed discussions that we have, to sit on the audit committee and listen to what it is we have done to correct some of the things that were found. Every business has a problem, and when you find a problem, then you put a plan of action in place to fix those problems, and that is what we're doing at Tennessee State. My last comments have to do with the issue of housing. I read an article last night from Tennessee Journalist which says that the title of the article was, "I have no place to live." And this was from a junior student, not from Tennessee State, but from the University of Tennessee. Student housing is a problem nationally, and it is a particular problem in HBCUs. Ever since Mr. Floyd was so unceremoniously murdered in the street, there's been an uptick in an interest in going to historically black university and colleges like Tennessee State University. We had no way of anticipating the ebullience of the interest in attending our university, but we're proud to say that we have met the challenge and we continue to meet the challenge. As to housing, I've been selected as a member of the Housing Committee to help correct our long-term problem. It is very clear to me, as a person that's dealt with money and a lot of it, having worked for a $10 trillion organization. I currently am a vice chairman of a $4 billion organization. But aside from all of that, I have solicited the services of a public-private partnership to deal with our housing situation. Mr. Tony Giarantano, some of you probably know him, who is a prominent builder here, wants to do a public-private partnership with us on property that we own here on our campus downtown. He has offered us $60 million to build on that property, plus a cash flow of some $3 million a year for a lease, if in fact we worked out some kind of arrangement with him to build housing on that property. I know, and we know, that if he offered us $60 million up front, that the property is worth a heck of a lot more than that. So we are in the process of getting that appraised. That $60 million would go into an endowment and make up for some of the shortfall of the $250 million that we didn't get for reparations, appropriations. Matter of fact, if in fact we'd gotten the $500 million that we're supposed to get, we wouldn't be here talking about some of the problems that we have today. So we're having to take that, which is a pittance of what we should have gotten, to fix the problems that have been built up over the years. So I say that, and I'll say it again. If in fact we had gotten the money we were supposed to get, we wouldn't be here talking about the problems that we have today with our facilities, with our infrastructure, with our housing situation. One last comment with regards to housing. That is not the only person that is a professional developer that I personally have solicited to come in and try to help solve the housing problem. We have solicited the services of Turner Construction, who I'm sure you know is one of the prominent construction companies in the world. We have solicited the services of McKissick & McKissick, who has a history of having built buildings on our campus. We've solicited the services of Moody Nolan, a prominent architectural firm who's also responsible for helping us with our overall plan. And we've solicited the services of Wall Street. I was head of a municipal finance department, and this is going to have to be, these things are going to have to be financed with a combination of private funds and public funds, probably with a municipal bond offering. So we have a team of people that we already plan to put forward, hopefully approved by the Tennessee Building Authority to address the problem. One last approach has been to solicit the services of a wealthy, high net worth individual who's African American, who is currently negotiating with a church with property adjacent to Tennessee State to purchase that property and build 1,300 beds on that property as we speak. I spoke to him this morning. We are still in conversations with the church. Hopefully we get that land, and hopefully we can get approval from you and from others necessary to work a situation where we build our beds, we build additional beds, and then we make an arrangement with the university where in fact we have students to fill those beds. That is a long-term problem. So I'm going to stop my comments. I thank you for the privilege of having an opportunity to speak with you this morning. My conclusion is very simple. Some of the recommendations that we've heard, we've addressed and are addressing and are fully capable of addressing those and changing those things that need to be changed. And we are fully capable of managing ourselves. And my last comment is that I didn't like Jim Crow when I grew up in Tennessee, and I still don't like him. And I ask you to respectfully allow us to manage our own affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McKenzie.
Good morning, Senators, or good afternoon now, Senators. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak tonight, or to this morning.
Do you mind introducing yourself as
absolutely,
well?
Absolutely. So I am Sean Wimberly Jr., and I serve as student trustee here at Tennessee State University on the Board of Trustees. I am a junior agricultural business major, and I'm also what is known as the TSU baby. My parents met here at Tennessee State about 21 years ago, where they had me in a place called Court Villa, right across from the apartments where I stay at now. And so I said it to say that TSU has played a very important part of my life, from the conception of me to now a year from now, the graduation and the start of my career. So being here, as I serve as student trustee and as a member of the board, I have participated in several board discussions regarding issues confronting the institution, like our housing crisis, the enrollment, the scholarship issues, and I've been a part of several committee discussions addressing the university's housing plans. Now, several of these discussions have led to the reorganization of units and departments within the university. And with that, the board and management has made decisions on how to solve some of these issues. And at one point I want to mention is that as a student being on the board, there are some uncomfortable threshold you have to pass, because you recognize that you may be at a disadvantage because you are a student. However, on this board, I've been comfortable asking questions and providing dialogue to the board and to President Glover and other members of management. And so with that being said, it's important to mention that not only have I been able to communicate thoroughly with the board, I have met with a variety of students ranging from different classes, some living on campus, others living off campus, and I've met with students from all different walks of life here on TSU's campus. And the student's perspective is very key in today's meeting. I think the Comptroller earlier mentioned that the students' thought, how they were feeling has not been mentioned. And so as a student, we place our faith in leadership. And we all can agree to that. And even though we have hit bumps in the road, I can say that we appreciate the university's willingness to work with us and accommodate our needs. We've recognized that our university has gone out of its way to accommodate the needs of a student profile that is very different than the profile of other institutions. And I can say that many of us can appreciate that. And as a student, the growth of my institution, well, I'll reverse back. As a black student, the growth of my institution in many ways fills me with so much joy, especially after several years of declining or stagnant enrollment, especially after speaking with my parents about the position that the school was in when they were here 21 years ago. Now, however, this joy, especially now, has become paired with uncertainty as students are unsure about their future and the future of this institution. And I can speak for myself from being a COVID graduate. These students, they crave stability in their collegiate experience, and they ought to have that. In 3 years, we've experienced the wave of COVID, the unprecedented growth of our HBCU, and now the possible consideration of an institutional structural change. Which brings me to my next point. In my review of the Comptroller's report, I must highlight the two policy considerations regarding TSU's governance structural change. It is my belief, and the students' belief, that a change like this will only prove to add to our uncertainty as to who will be leading us through my graduation and through my peers' matriculation. And for the very students who really understand what this change is, they may be led to feel as if they are a different class of students compared to other similar institutions. This cannot be the picture or the reality that we want to convey to the citizens of this state. And more importantly, this cannot be the atmosphere that we impose on the students of this institution. Now, currently, as Trustee McKenzie mentioned, our current board has the institutional knowledge and perspective that a new board would simply not possess. So with that being said, I would like to conclude, and despite the challenges we have faced as a premier HBCU, there are a lot of positive things that are happening at our school. And I believe the board, the administration, and the student body are poised to build upon this positive, address the challenges, and take TSU to its fullest potential moving forward. And with that being said, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak this afternoon now. That concludes my statement.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our comments, and may God bless each of you.
So, Dr. McKenzie, Dr. Cole, Dr. Clever, Sean, thank you. Appreciate it. By the way, just good luck in as a senior and for a prosperous future. Before you go, any questions from the committee? So, Senator Hensley, you're recognized, sir.
Just one quick question, Mr. Chairman. And part of the issue today has been with the board oversight and Dr. Glover and the administration. So the question is, the scholarship funding that was $6.4 million and then increased to $28 million. Seems like that was increased and spent without the board approving that. So I don't know, maybe the report doesn't have the timeline correct, but according to the report, the initial budget was $6.4 million, and then that was increased to $28 million, but the board didn't approve it until November, and I assume most of those funds had already been spent by then. Just, is that a normal procedure for the board, or maybe you could comment about that timeline?
The board received its meeting in June, but I had to personally, since they didn't call an emergency meeting, I had to personally call each board member to discuss it with them, as we do in many, many occasions. We have to call each individual board member and have that conversation with them to make them knowledgeable about certain things. Otherwise, it have to be a meeting that's noticed, and sometimes there's not enough time to notice a meeting and then get the job done. So the board actually, the budget goes through three stages of the process. You may want to explain the 3 steps of the budget. But the answer is, No, it's not entirely true. They voted on it in November, but they gave their comments and consent prior to an actual proper vote.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. See no other questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today. So,
Thank you.
And for our guests, thank you for, frankly, your behavior, and I really appreciate that. And to the committee, is there any other further business to come before the committee? So, seeing none, we will take this under advisement, and subject to my call, this meeting of the ad hoc committee to review the management and operations of Tennessee State University is adjourned.